Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. First of all, as people were joining, I was explaining that we've got two functions on the webinar where you can make contact. First of all, there's the chat function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. Please use that to connect to your fellow webinar delegates. So introduce yourself, use it to network, share information with each other. But the key one that myself and Tom will be looking at is going to be the Q&A. So we're going to use that for the question and answer. So as Angus has just said to us and shared with you, there is going to be the opportunity to ask questions and hear some answers at the end of the session, but don't just leave it till the end. Stick questions in that box to the panelists, and that way we can just be having a look at them. So obviously I'm going to be leading the webinar, but I know Tom's going to be looking at those as we go through. So that way it may be some of them get answered in the webinar, so we'll scoot over those, but we'll then make a point obviously of coming back at the end of this. So we're going to be roughly sort of 45 to 60 minutes in the webinar session, and then we're going to have at least half an hour for those Q&As when Tom and I will be doing those. So Tom is Tom Trainer, he's Head of Research and IT at the DSC, and he's going to be joining on the screen at the end with myself. And I'm, Jill Jolly. I'm Director of Achieve Consultants Limited and an Associate Trainer with the DSC. As Roy Angus said, I've been many years successfully fundraising and managing fundraisers and directing fundraising teams and departments across the sector, making sure that people and organisations achieve the best in terms of their financial income, so that those organisations can go on and do the incredible and amazing things they do for their beneficiary group. So as in that old song from Cabaret, money certainly makes the world go around. You can't do the incredible things without the money to do that. So without anything else, let's just have a look at the topics that we're going to be looking at in this session together. So we're going to be looking at what is the environment in which we're actually operating in from a fundraising perspective. So it's an ever-changing environment, you say, especially, you know, as Wales has just come out of its lockdown, England's gone into a lockdown, which is a bit longer than the Welsh one. We've got the exciting news about the possibility of a vaccine coming forth. But I don't normally like to quote Boris Johnson, but as he said yesterday, we need to be cautious and it's going to take time. So you say we're just sort of, you know, trying. It's an ever moving. It's like quicksand. It's moving, but again, we're trying to give a snapshot and a flavour of the environment in which we're actually operating in. So what's happening in the world of fundraising during this sort of global pandemic time? So we're trying to give you, some information to share and help you get up to date. We're going to be looking at some changes, some trends, and just some updates. So I've got some graphs, some data. It's not like one of the PM's briefing sessions, but I've got some graphs because it's interesting to see some of the trends and things that are happening, as well as to share some sort of commentary around that. Going to be, looking at some new developments. You know, some things were starting to emerge in terms of fundraising activities before the pandemic, but as a result of this, some of those activities have grown, developed, and some new things come along. So again, I can't tell you everything that's going on because we've only got limited time, but again, I want to give you a snapshot and just inspire you to also go off and do a bit of digging, keep yourself up to date, find out what's happening, and then your organisation can decide what's right for you at this moment in time. Not every organisation can do everything because, again, we've got limited capacity. But again, it's just being aware of what other organisations are doing, what new funds are coming up. And then it's just a chance for you then to hear some of the things now, but also use it as that basis for you to go off and find out more information. And then finally, we're going to, before we hand over and do the question and answer with Tom and myself, we're going to share some insights as to what all the things that we've been talking about, what it may mean and what you can actually do about it. So hopefully, as a result of spending some time together this morning, you'll also start to be drawing up a bit of an action list and some points that you want to share internally, possibly share with some of your funders and supporters, but also for you, if you're involved directly in fundraising, give you some pointers to actually turn into some action. And as I say, right at the end, Tom will be joining us when we'll actually come out from behind the screens, the slides, and actually, I say, we'll share, say, some time together in that Q&A time. So 2020 has definitely been a difficult time for lots of us from a personal, professional basis, but also, say, in terms of fundraising. There's lots of things. I know I've definitely had some sleepless nights and a few tears along the way, things that I know I was going to be achieving, and certainly now, as a result of changes, won't be able to, at least in the time scale that myself and the charities that I was working with were looking at. But there are some positives as well. I told you before, with a name like Jolly, we've got to think positive as well. So whilst it is a bit of a negative slide, you say, and many sympathies with anyone who's actually lost anyone to COVID as well over these last few months. It has been a difficult time. But let's move on to thinking about what the landscape's been about. There's definitely been some impacts. It's estimated, that the loss to the voluntary sector of around £4.3 billion during the first lockdown. That was, back in March. It was estimated that those months that were in lockdown then, the sector, didn't get £4.3 billion of income that was expected. And that was then sort of predicted forward into a year loss from March of this year to March of next year of around about £12 billion was going to be lost. And there was lots of surveys being done, and that was used to actually share with the government, as well as to share with the charity sector as a whole, so that individual charities didn't just think it was them, it's sector-wide the problem. There's other things being highlighted on this slide, that grant-making trusts and foundations have come up with different models in which their income was coming in, but also where they actually had their investments, where their assets were invested. Some themselves were not endowed, but they themselves might be fundraising, so as a result don't have as much money to give away. Now we're in the week where Children in Need, the big sort of Friday sort of big telethon takes place, and it's going to be interesting to see what the income that's raised from that. But again, Children in Need is one of those fundraising grant makers, so they raise money and then over the next 12 months start to give it away. But obviously there's been spikes in charities, needing more money. Services have changed, but also the demand on those services. So again, if any of you are out there from food banks, you don't need me to tell you that demand has actually been increasing. But also the demand on grant makers has been increasing because of some of those other areas where charities have traditionally secured funding has come from. It's just not been happening. So again, it's put more competition. And again, from some estimates from the Association of Charitable Organisations, it's revealed that this is quite colossal. I'm going to say it slowly, that they've had an increase of 122% in applications compared with the same period last year. So your strike rate might not be quite as high as it used to be because the competition levels have actually gone up an incredible amount. But also grant makers themselves are wrestling with how to deal with an emergency response and having money available to do that. So some of them have just literally pivoted their grant giving and said, all we're concentrating on at the moment is actually giving money to organisations who are leading the COVID response end. Again, I was on a major capital appeal when this crisis hit us, and I was talking to several grant making bodies, and I was in line for £100,000 grant. And then you say 2 days after the big Boris announcement back in March, got this contact saying, really sorry, we're holding everything. We're only going to be responding to COVID applications. So that's still on hold. So this is it. So some have changed. Some have actually dipped into their assets as well. Some of them have said, well, this is for a rainy day. Obviously, lots of organisations use the assets to generate income in terms of grant makers, but some of those are saying, some of this is for a rainy day. And my goodness, as we've looked outside, it's not just been raining, it's been absolutely pouring down. So this is it. Definitely some headlines there from the voluntary sector press and the national media, just to share with you, giving some sort of initial impressions. But other organisations, obviously, income has dropped from some sources. So many organisations use the opportunity to launch an emergency appeal. And this has actually helped raise lots of cash and replace some of the lost funding for many charities. Again, I was speaking to just a regional medium-sized charity only on Friday, and they told me their emergency appeal had raised £250,000. So whilst it didn't go to replace all of the money that they've lost through some of their fundraising events, their community fundraising, or you say individuals doing activities to raise money on their behalf, you say it has definitely helped plug some of that huge deficit that they were actually seeing. So again, this is the next slide that is quite interesting. It comes from Fundraising Magazine, but again, it shows a range of charities and how much their emergency appeals have actually raised. So top of that hit parade is Age UK with £12 million being raised. Then we come down to Marie Curie, quite a big drop there to 5.8 million. And then down towards the end, we've got some overseas charity with World Vision UK with just over £500,000, Islamic Relief, and then PDSA. And we've got a couple of animal welfare charities in there with RSPCA. Where's the other one? It's gone. PDSA, yeah, and Cats Protection. Because again, I know lots of the animal welfare charities are seeing a huge increase of demand as people are going through difficult times. They've not got the income to look after the pets that they've perhaps got in lockdown. Some of them unfortunately thought it might be nice to have a dog, cat, goat, whatever in lockdown, and then realised there was an awful lot more to it. So again, lots of different reasons why the demand has gone up for different charities. They're having to pivot their services, or there's increased demand on those. But again, the emergency appeals are helping plug some of those gaps. So there's 2020, we've seen rapid shifts in donor and supporter behaviour, as I sort of alluded to at the beginning. Now, this report that I'm just going to take the next 7 slides from, these actually are looking at individuals, their donors, individual donors and supporters, and how behaviour has changed. And I think there's some really fascinating insights that we can take from this. And then I'm going to give some sector-wide information a little bit later. And there's the link to this report there if you want to find out more. So Generation Z is giving. Many organisations often say to me, you know, we've got lots of traditional supporters, lots of supporters who are getting older, but we really want to get some new supporters on board. And this is fascinating that this report says Generation Z, which are the 18 to 24-year-olds, and they're definitely supporting charities more. So if you're thinking about who to target, if you're not targeting this group, then it is an audience that you want to think about, possibly engaging with first before you actually start asking them for money. But definitely this generation is wanting to do things. There's been this great big localism. We saw it very much with the clapping on the doorsteps that we had in the first lockdown that was sort of UK wide, of supporting key workers and the NHS. But you know, local causes are rising in importance. Now, for some of you, that's a great big tick, and you said, yes, that's something good news for us. But also, if you're a national charity thinking, well, we're a national charity or we're an international charity, how does that affect us? Well, just think about how you can tap into that trend. So again, it maybe you share some key messages in different areas, you know, about what you as a national charity are doing in that area, or what if you're an international charity and your services are overseas, what your supporters are doing in a local area, and help think about that localism. And also, the world has gone digital. You know, I can't think this time last year we'd be doing a webinar and I'd be sharing this information with the hundreds of people that we are doing this morning. But, you know, we've gone digital. People who never thought about using a laptop, a tablet, or even their phone to actually get information, knowledge, you know, so this is it. We need to think about what is your digital brand, and is it strong? that people will actually remember you once they've actually got involved. Because as we said before, lots of people are doing fundraising for your charities, and asking their friends, their colleagues. So again, we want to share that. And one of the benefits of that is they're getting the message out. But again, we want to be able to share some key messages and your brand so that it does actually stop with people and they don't just give and then forget. And there is that benefit from that. So let's just have a look about, this is a report from the autumn. It was done in September. So this is looking at the last 3 months and actually asking people the percentage of the public who've donated to charity over the last 3 months. 38% said they hadn't donated. But I think this is incredible. 59%, so almost 2/3 of the population who'd been questioned of this had actually given to a charity, and 3% can't remember. So I don't know if they're just being coy or literally can't remember, but it's again, it might be the brand wasn't strong enough for them to remember, or it could be, you say, they're just not donors, or they've actually, the 59% might actually jump up to 62. I think I've done the maths right on that one there. So let's move on to the next one. Obviously, there's been lots of donating to the NHS and NHS related charities. So if you are an NHS charity, it's done you a great big favour, this whole thing. I don't like to think so, thinking about the positives out of a negative, but he says as we move forward, that's important to actually learn what we can from any situation like this. But you say, if we exclude the NHS charities, we can still see those trends there, and looking at all the giving that's been happening of different age groups. So we can see, that 18 to 24, it has been a big area. And that traditional end of older people, 65 to 80. But, it's been pretty high, amongst the other age groups, where at least half in those age groups are actually donating. So lots of people are very charity aware, very aware that organisations across the UK, whether they're providing services here or overseas, but they've lost income, but they also, are continuing and they need money. And there's a good appetite out there. Let's just have a look at the drivers, the reasons. Looking at motivation is so important for understanding what's going on out there. So when we look at sort of this greeny aqua colour, the drivers for increased giving. So this is it. People are recognising that people, animals, but also charities are suffering right now. There's that loss of income. When we come to looking in January about your fundraising message in the current times, we're going to be thinking about motivation and thinking about your key messages. And normally I wouldn't be saying, the fact you've not got money isn't necessarily a reason why people could give. It would be our normal messaging. But during this pandemic times, we're definitely seeing that change there. And the fact that you as a charity have had a loss of income, and then linking that to what you might not be able to do, or the increased demand on your services, or the fact that people are not going to benefit from the things that they're used to in the past, that is then really motivating people to actually give to you. And so that was 45%. So it's incredible. They want to support charities that aren't being supported by the government during the crisis. I've got some additional information we're coming back to about the amount of government funding that was made available. I know we've just been hearing about some extra money that's been going out to the arts and cultural sector in the last couple of weeks, but definitely that's motivating people to say, crikey, there's all these job retention schemes, there's help for the hospitality industry with the Eat Out to Help Out that happened in August. But what is there for the charity sector? Obviously, you say some charities are able to furlough staff, but it isn't necessarily replacing money. And you say the recognition that charities aren't getting the money has been that motivator. And also then we've got our third highest one, is that key workers need my help now. So again, there was lots of concern in the first lockdown about the amount of PPE being available or not being available, but also needing support. It's been said that many health workers are now totally exhausted, but also suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So mental health issues as well as physical challenges. are facing sort of many key workers. And so that has been one of those drivers, the motivation for people actually increasing and giving more. But also, you know, there are reductions in giving as well. And so we can see very clearly there. And the one that is incredibly worrying as people are losing their jobs is that people don't have the spare money. They think the government should be giving more support. And others are thinking that the government is giving enough support to actually help out those charities. So again, the types of charity that have been donated in the last 3 months, you say, I'm not going to sort of go through this line by line, but again, you know, just have a quick look and see where you actually fit in there. You say, I've just been mentioning that the government's just been making more available to the arts and cultural sector, and you can see that that's not been a big area. Not surprisingly, NHS and public health related organisations are very high up there and top of that leaderboard with that 35%. But, you know, there's been an awful lot of talk about older people being shielding, older people in care homes, older people who are lonely and isolated. And I say it's quite disappointing that that's only 10% on there. But again, they may sort of tap into other areas as well. But again, just wanted to share that. In terms of the other, you say, obviously we've had 2020 has been very much the topic of on everyone's lips has obviously been, you know, the COVID crisis, the global pandemic. But, you know, don't forget there's been other issues that have come to light, but come to the forefront, or, you know, definitely sort of hit the media and there's been direct action around. Obviously, sort of the environment is still a big concern around things, you know, and obviously sort of we see that in there. But the Black Lives Matters campaign has grown considerably, you know, over the last few months, again, with some direct action over the summer. But again, we're seeing that. And when we come to some updates, you'll see there are some new funds actually out there for organisations who are tackling things around that area. So a couple more sort of bits of data just to share with you about motivations and willingness to give. Again, I'm not going to go through this line by line. You are going to be able to access these slides on the website afterwards. So please, you say, follow the links that will come up later on if you want to sort of look in more detail, as well as you can obviously download the report where some of this information has been taken from the link that was shared earlier. So this is it. So there's been a change in willingness to give since the COVID, with the darker aqua colour being more likely to donate. So causes specifically related to COVID, but also local and community causes are sort of higher up there as well. Overseas appeals, yes, 6% of people questioned were actually likely to give more, but you say we have a won't donate. That's increased to 28% in there. So again, that localism. So again, it's about just thinking, even if you're an international charity, what you do, how you raise your money, but also how you interact with people, possibly in a local way as well. That community element that we're saying there's a lot of income down. You know, so requests from friends for sponsorship or donations for a marathon or other goal. You know, we didn't have the London Marathon. Many in the end pivoted and did their own London Marathon last month because it didn't happen in April. And when it was moved originally till October, there was the hope everyone would be on the streets of London pounding those. But it was only then in the end the elite runners and people who were registered and had places were encouraged to do their own marathon, their own 26 miles in their locality. Some did, some didn't, but also some people felt they'd already given to other things by that point. But also things like community and work events, things like the Macmillan Coffee Morning that many people are very familiar with at the end of September. I know they were actually expecting only a third of what would normally be generated and compared to last year's income from that. The figures aren't finalised and I've not got an update on that one yet. So let's move on, and just one last graph just to share about percentages taken from this report. Who would consider a virtual event and why? So this is an interesting way for those organisations who've not done anything in the virtual arena in terms of fundraising. possibly you're thinking about it. And our last session at the start of February is all about going digital. But when this report was undertaken and the research carried out, the question was, would you consider a virtual event and why? And the leading one with 27%, the answer that people gave, I want an activity that connects me to people I can't see right now. And so as we've gone back into a lockdown, obviously, you know, in England where I am at the moment, is we were on the rule of 6 because I was just in a tier 1 area. But where my parents are, they were in a tier 3. So they weren't even able to see people. So there's not been that much change from them to where they are now with the England-wide lockdown. But this is it, you know, I'm back to doing sort of, you know, a Zoom chat with friends and family. Seeing, you know, Friday night gin and tonic with people. We've reinstated the jolly lockdown quiz again. We've even got a few from overseas on that with relatives in Geneva and Paris joining us. So this is it. So we can pivot that, and there's a willingness for people to want to do something to connect to people that they can't see right now. And we can easily turn some of those things into a fundraiser. As we said before, I've got more time on my hands was a response that people gave because they're working from home or possibly aren't working, they're furloughed, or possibly don't actually have a job at the moment. So again, you know, it's something to do, and it's a feel-good factor. I'm doing it, it's filling my time, it's giving me an interest, but also it's tapping into, and I'm doing something really worthwhile to help a charity. So it's an interesting one, some of those that we can see out there. No, it's fine out of my window today, but I don't know how much this 18% one, the good weather, means I want to spend more time outside. Let's hope we get some lovely autumnal and winter days that we often do with those lovely blue skies and high pressure where you can wrap up. So again, there's still people wanting to do some exercise, get out and about, and so wanting to spend some time, and that could be in a fundraising activity as well. So that was one report. I've now got this other report that I just wanted to share some of the key findings. So it's the status of UK fundraising. And this is put together by Blackboard Europe and the Institute of Fundraising. If you're not aware, Blackboard are the organisation behind Raiser's Edge, a fundraising database that quite a lot of charities use, but they are also behind Just Giving. So again, really good source of information if you're not aware of that organisation. And it's in partnership with the Institute of Fundraising, which is now the Chartered Institute of Fundraising because they got chartered status earlier this year. So some key facts from that report is saying, I've got 4 slides here just to share with you, because again, I think it gives us a really good picture and a good indication, you know, what's going on out there, what's happening in this fundraising environment in which we're all trying to ensure that we keep the income that we were hoping for, but also raise additional money because of some of the lost income that we've experienced. So no surprise, key fact, you know, voluntary income growth has slowed down this year across all types and sizes of not-for-profits. So again, don't just think, and if your trustees are saying, and I know we've got some trustees on the call, but you know, don't just think it's your charity. This is sector-wide. Everyone has been hit. So 27% actually said their income declined, and that's an increase on 21% from last year, because each year some charities, for all sorts of different reasons, their income's declined. But you say this has definitely increased the number of charities who say their income has declined. Interestingly, 24% have said it stayed the same, and that's actually up from 16% last year. But 40% have actually said that their income has increased. And whilst that sounds really positive, and it is great news, and I reckon part of that is down to some of the emergency appeals that have been happening, but it is actually down from 49%. So we've seen a drop in 9% from the figures in 2019. And the most common answers that were given for income growth were actually undertaking planned new or different activities, but also hiring people with the right skills. And that's really interesting because there is this temptation to say, freeze on recruitment. We're not bringing anyone else into the organisation. But it is one of those sort of, sometimes it's the downside of just saying it across the board, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. But sometimes we do actually need to invest a bit more, because if we invest, we'll actually open some doors that otherwise couldn't be opened, and bring in people in with the right skills and knowledge to possibly open up some new and different doors for you. So definitely some facts and figures that might sort of get you thinking there. So continuing on with those key facts. So organisations have definitely adapted their fundraising strategy. So lots of people have been talking to me about, what do we do to adapt? How do we reforecast? Because we're being asked to reforecast every month at the moment, because things were changing so fast. But I think things we're starting to settle down a bit. And then you say we've started with this second wave of the COVID and seeing the spikes in that. But again, 44% of organisations were found to be willing to innovate and try new things. And I think that's definitely key. Just saying we're ploughing on with the same furrow isn't necessarily going to actually release funds, because some things just won't work at the moment. You know, those mass participation events just aren't happening. We might be able to pivot them, but that means we've got to be willing to change and try new things. But also, one of the other key things to bear in mind is some sort of new activities, some new forms of fundraising was starting to come through, things in a digital arena, doing things virtually, which was starting to happen before the pandemic hit anyway, with concerns about, environmental impact on travel to possibly do an overseas challenge event. Some people were turning those into a virtual event anyway. So we've just seen an acceleration in those sorts of things. 60% of respondents to this survey say actually have done some form of virtual fundraising during the pandemic. And this is it, with over 3/4 of those doing it for the first time. So, a quarter were already doing it, but 3/4 have done something in this virtual arena for the first time. And 64% have found virtual fundraising a good way to attract new supporters. So we're always saying, how do we get new ones? Well, this is it. So that's one way. Let's move on. And again, I've got the sample size. That's the end figure up there. But again, what do you think are the main fundraising challenges the charity sector will face over the next 3 years? And respondents were actually asked to tick up to 5. So, it comes as no surprise, 70% of those questions, were found recovering financially for the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The economic situation leading to fewer donations is just up there as well, 1% behind. Adapting to new ways of fundraising as a result of the pandemic. But again, it's quite a big drop from 55% down to 30%, but the change in demand for services. And that again is something that we need to think about, and I'm going to come back to in my summing up at the end of this session. But definitely some food for thought with some of the respondents there and the percentage. So let's move on to just now have a look at how do you expect income from these sources to change from your organisation. So the green is a decrease, the light blue is no significant change, the purple is an increase, and the blue is, I don't know, that's the darker blue of the colours. So online donations, we're seeing, definitely the biggest increase there with that purple line of 44%. Direct donations, cash or online, you say that's interesting. There's many organisations that say there's going to be a decrease. 25% are saying there's going to be an increase. So it's not quite ruling each other out, but interesting there. No significant change to direct debits or standing orders, the highest response for that area. But it's something we need to think about. If we are attracting new supporters, once they've given, we've updated, informed and thanked them, are we then offering them the opportunity to support us on a regular basis? And for many organisations, they don't sort of take their donor journey to that stage. So it's definitely something to be thinking about, and definitely where quite a number of organisations are expecting to see some increase as well as some decrease, because unfortunately, if people lose their jobs, who don't feel in a financial position to make a regular commitment. Donations from events and challenges, we're not surprised, are we? 65% seen a decrease. only 9% seeing an increase, but that's where we'd expect it. But those are some figures to back it up, to share with your charity, to share with your colleagues, and to share with your trustees as well. And this is another area that's definitely interesting, and something that I've been doing quite a bit of work on over the pandemic times, is this increase or decrease in legacy or gifts that have been given in memory. And the way that funerals are taking place, very few people, we might say, oh gosh, there's a decline and a drop in income from funeral donations if your charity actually looks to secure money in that way. But there's going to be lots of different memorial services, ways that people want to remember a loved one. And we're definitely seeing an increase in people setting up tribute funds as a way to actually have a longer term link with the deceased, but also to remember them by doing lots of different things, not always fundraising. If you've got an online tribute site, it's a way to actually share memories, share photos, but also many people then set up a tribute fund to raise money in memory of that person. So moving on now then, and I said I'd come back to some of the figures around different sort of statutory money and whatever as well. We've seen a growth with the National Emergencies Trust. It was originally set up in the wake of Grenfell, but obviously they've definitely seen this huge amount of money, and the UK community foundations are also being a distributor of lots of that money. We've seen a lot of changes, but as I say, we won't know the real story until next year or possibly the year after, when charity accounts become available, but also funders' accounts may be available. So we've got lots of uncertainty in the response from grant-making trusts and foundations that's going on out there. The DSC has been reviewing major grant makers since March and has found over 150 COVID-specific programs have been set up. The rate is slowing, and we were thinking we were going very much into a rebuilding phase, but as we've got this second spike, it may be there's perhaps some of those programs are actually going to be extended, or also some of the other charities that perhaps didn't do anything in the first lockdown and the first wave may now realise this is a long-term situation and is starting to do things and set up programmes. Now, in terms of the National Lottery Fund, they responded, National Lottery Community Fund, to give it its full title, they responded relatively quickly and redirected lots of its funding into COVID-specific responses. We've definitely seen a new focus on organisations made vulnerable by the crisis, actually scoring higher points for actually getting funding from some of these sources, as well as the at-risk organisations who literally are at risk of folding, but also marginalised or underserved communities, such as the BME communities, the LGBT plus communities as well. And those are coming to the fore. And again, organisations are recognising that they're getting left behind. And so more grant funding is being made available. And obviously, the National Lotteries Community Fund has been administering government funding for small charities. And we'll just touch on that a little bit later. So obviously, you know, there was this response from central government, and it was back on the 8th of April, to give you the key dates, when the £750 million emergency package was announced. There's obviously been, and if you've been following the charity press, you know, and also the DSC's been doing lots of campaigning and lobbying, because where is this money? Where has it gone to? Some of it has gone out. And I know the hospice movement, you say some of that 750 million was restricted. And I know that has definitely gone to hospices, but there's other monies, you know, we're still a bit unsure where is it, has it been allocated? Is it actually enabling organisations to continue to provide those vital services, and also ensure that those services and organisations are still there this time next year, when they're going to be as needed as much as they are now, if not even more. So again, corporate grant schemes of sort of, you know, organisations, many corporates that do have their own, you know, foundation where they give out real cash, but lots of these have pivoted. You know, Morrison's Foundation, which is linked to the supermarket, you know, they set up and again pivoted their normal fund, got moved over, and it was about COVID-19 homelessness support fund. They identified the homeless people who were homeless or vulnerable of becoming homeless. Is they wanted to give lots of support into there. Is different programs. Morrison's have got, Barclays have got this 100 grants of 100,000. Dixon's Carphone Warehouse, they've given money to, well, it's been basically in kind gifts. So obviously lots of organisations have been wanting extra equipment. You know, your laptop, where did that come from? Your tablet, it may be because it's been donated by Dixon's Carphone PLC. And John Lewis Partnership, they launched a £1 million community support fund. It's just a small fraction. There's loads and loads of corporates out there. And I know Ecclesiastical, along with several other, insurance companies, have made, significant and very gratefully received contributions to the National Emergencies Trust as well. So what's happening? What are we doing more of? Well, you know, I'm so keen that people, you know, look after their existing supporters. Don't just use this time to find new ones, or even though you want to get some new ones to grow your income, but to replace ones that have lost. But, you know, let's look after the ones that we've, you know, already got. And I know lots of organisations, especially their major donor supporters, they're actually been using the time in lockdown, even if they've not been able to meet them, get them into their organisations. They've been doing lots of different things to actually, look after their supporters and keep them connected, giving them some privileged insights so they're even more connected with their organisation. So again, you know, I'm just going to whittle through some of these slides now, just with some updates, things that are going on. So this is a report, Newton Investment Management saying that it's been a bruising year for charity investments. So thinking about most grant giving foundations and trusts, they've got assets that are invested. Obviously, some companies, some stocks and shares are doing very well, but others are doing quite abysmally. It was great news, yesterday about the announcement, of this potential vaccine. You know, the stock market went up yesterday, so that's good news all round. So this is it. It's just interesting, that though, to bear in mind that some trusts and grant-making organisations just won't have the same income coming in from the assets that are generating that income, and especially if they've dipped in and actually liquidized some of those assets so they can give more money at the moment. But again, looking at things that are happening, incredible that, you know, because cash coming into organisations is definitely not happening. People, even my local chip shop doesn't want cash. You've got to take a card if you're going to go to the chippy. So this is it, text giving during lockdown, some incredible figures here. It's definitely up over £2 million through this particular platform donor in the spring of this year. So if you're not doing text giving, something to think about. Definitely more and more people are thinking about updating or even making their will. We look for triggers. What are some triggers about will making? Previous to this, I would never put a global pandemic because it wasn't on the horizon and it wasn't one to think about. But definitely, this talk is horrendous. You know, we're back to having these daily figures announced of how many people, unfortunately, have died. But what it's doing to some people, it's actually saying, you know, life isn't going to go on forever. We need to think about what will happen if I become ill. Not just through COVID, it might just be something else. But, you know, it's one of those triggers that is making people think about writing a first will or updating an existing will. And as a result of that, thinking about including a charitable bequest. Again, something interesting you say, this is an online raffle platform. It says raised over 100,000 for charities across the UK during the pandemic. So it's incredible, you say, just looking for different ways to actually fundraise and reach people in this virtual arena. So you say, I want to just share, again, we're going to sort of whistle through some of these, but you say some new developments. And I mentioned before about, the rise in the Black Lives Matter and the fact it's been recognised that the BAME community is very much underfunded, and organisations working in that community, have been badly hit during the pandemic, but even without this, were not as fruitful with their fundraising activities before. So the National Lottery Fund with the Global Fund for Children has got this new Phoenix Fund, and also Resourcing Racial Justice Fund. Those are actually sort of new funds that are sort of available now. Again, a really interesting one, the Peter Sowerby Foundation has issued a call. Quick, you've got to be quick on this. 16th of November is the deadline, but it's about increasing access funds. So it's about supporting charities to digitally enable access to services or adapt delivery of service to comply with social distances or other COVID response measures. Many of you, out there, you will fit into that. So go and have a look. Don't go too quick. Just think, hang on till 12 noon and then have a look at that one. Again, local giving, there's lots of opportunities here. So again, just think, can you engage with these opportunities? Power to Change, again, a £3 million unrestricted grants programme for community businesses, and many voluntary sector organisations have got part of your income generation is about having trading activities or social investment activities. So things are there available that you might be able to tap into. Garfield Weston has partnered with the Media Trust. So it's interesting, many funders are going in partnership with each other to actually increase the amount of money available to strengthen their impact, but also perhaps to reach more charities and more beneficiaries as a result of that. This is a programme that's going to be running during the whole of 2021. So if you fit into this, have an investigation, have a dig into that. And again, CAF, Charities Aid Foundation, have got this resilience fund, and look at that, grants between 10,000 and 100,000. So if you're not looking into it, definitely do. And again, it's looking at causes and communities that fund the aims to help people living in poverty, Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, children and young people, unemployed, homelessness. So again, lots of those areas that have been particularly badly hit or weren't actually at the same levels as some other organisations even before the pandemic. So again, just another thing there with the small business opportunity and Work for Good. So again, that might be something else that you can tap into. So what does it all mean? Well, we're almost there, but as I say, I just wanted you to think about, there's new money that's actually out there. Some of it, yeah, we might think cynically, is it new or is it just redirected? Is there enough to meet the need? I don't think so, but there's more and more programs coming up all the time. So as fundraisers or people working in the fundraising environment, it's about really keeping tapped into information sources, finding out what's relevant, going back to your existing supporters, lots of grant making trusts and foundations who are wanting to engage with those of us who are already being supported, but also are welcoming new applicants as well, and especially through their different and new programs. Is it flexible? There's going to be lots of competition out there for funds. So organisations that perhaps didn't do much in the grant making world, they've possibly not furloughed their community fundraisers or their events fundraisers and said, look at these new grant making bodies that are emerging, or seeing what we can do to re-engage with some past grants and trust supporters from the past. So definitely funders are wanting to know, what is the impact? How have we been affected? And that's a key message to be aware of and ask internally beforehand. How have we been affected? And even if you're not frontline, every single charity out there has actually been affected, large and small, but some way because of the COVID crisis. So really focus on that, and then you can have a clear message and then think, what of those new funding pots or those existing funding pots that are out there that we pivoted, can we actually be approaching, and what's our message that we're going to be sharing with them. You know, there's talk there may be some change. It's not happened yet, but, you know, to the gift aid scheme. So again, you know, be aware, keep monitoring that. There's talk it might be increased, where we get 25p in every pound at the moment if it's done under gift aid. There's talk about increasing that and campaigning to get that increased during these difficult times. But just make sure that every single donation that's eligible, you gift aid it. And still remember, you can go back 4 years. So if you've got a bit of a hole, just go back through your records and see what individuals have supported you, and did they do it under gift aid? Could you actually be having some sort of communication and conversation with those people and say, this is a way we can actually get a bit more money with no cost to yourself? So they don't even need to give any money, but the fact we can backdate that 4 years, just think about it, and just keep your eyes and ears out for any more support from the government. So what else can we do? Definitely keep engaged, which I've already touched upon, and stay informed. There's lots of different places that you can do that, but the DSC has got a bulletin. If you register with Funds Online, you get information. There's Charity Excellence, there's other networking opportunities, and obviously there's the Ecclesiastical Charity Hub. You know, do tap into that and register to get information from that. You know, so build your networks for information. Make sure you're doing first-class donor stewardship. Yeah, it sounds stupid, but make sure you thank, but then don't just thank, update, tell them how their money's making a difference, tell them what you're doing that's different, and then subsequently ask for another gift or additional support. So this is it, communicate and build on those past and current relationships. Think about pivoting your existing activities to maximize these opportunities in the virtual world. But also think outside your fundraising team. Make sure everyone across the organisation is involved in some way in fundraising, even if it is just about keeping eyes and ears open. It might be somebody's son, somebody's mum works at a company that's got a new fund. Everyone should just keep their ear to the ground and be feeding that in. You know, make sure you do your research, and when you are approaching grant makers, don't just say, we've got a new fund, let's whack off an application and do 5 others at the same time. Make sure you do quality versus quantity and target. Look at the words that they're using, look at what they want to achieve, and tell them how, by supporting your organisation, they can fulfil their objectives. Make sure you are very clear about the problems that you're facing and evidence it. Don't just say, we've got a big problem here in Liverpool, or there's a big problem supporting people in Southampton. Back it up with facts and figures, quotes from other respected organisations that show that. But then show what the impact is of your organisation on the lives of the people that you're helping. Because at the end of the day, any donor is going to support you because you're going to make a difference to the lives of people. So always share the impact, share the problem and evidence it, but also share the difference. Because one of my very corny phrases, but I actually say, if we're communicating in any shape or form to any sort of donor, we've got to share the difference their gift will make. Because if there's no difference, there's no point giving money. And the other thing to do is make sure that you actually sign up and join us on those future workshops. So thank you very much indeed. That's the end of the slides bit and this presentation element of the webinar. And as I say here, turn survival into success. Don't think negatively, you know, just try and keep positive and just say, what good can come out of this situation? And yes, there's always negative things we can find, but if you find the positive things, it actually builds up your resilience, but also will help turn your organisation into one that is very resilient and will survive. So I'm now joined by Tom. Here's Tom, and we're going to actually start having a look at some of those questions that you've been throwing into the question and answer session. So obviously I've been sharing information around the side. So Tom, I'm going to go over to you first and say, what are some of the questions you've spotted, and we can start to answer those now.
First I'd just say that, you know, there's a lot of really great, useful information there, Jill. I'll just sort of reiterate a couple of points that you made, particularly around communicating with existing funders. We know from our research recently and some surveys that we've done with funders that they're particularly interested in an increased level of engagement, and they want to offer additional and probably slightly different support to the organisations they're already engaged with. So before an organisation goes and looks for additional sources, engage with funders who are already funding you. Also, the point about quality over quantity, I think that's a really, really important one. We've said in the past about the scattergun approach. I think that's going to be even less effective now in the current situation. And also the challenges about non-COVID related stuff, because there is other things going on apart from COVID. I think that is a particular challenge that needs to be thought about by funders. That in a lot of ways, life goes on, and there are still other causes that need support. One of the questions that we had, I think it was a couple of questions that we had really about the challenges for non-registered organisations, non-registered charities, like small community groups and churches. Sort of how do they communicate the need for funding, and how do they get past the terms and conditions and the eligibility criteria which say funders won't consider non-registered charities? I mean, I would say, organisations, if they can do it, might well consider registering with the Charity Commission or Office of the Scottish Charity Regulator to get over that hurdle. But what would you say to that, Jill?
Sorry, Tom, I was just busy reading. I was trying to read a question.
It was about sort of non-registered charities and organisations. So obviously, as we know, a lot of eligibility criteria says that funders won't consider non-registered charities. And when I've discussed this with organisations in the past, I'd suggested to them that they might look into registering if they're eligible with the Charity Commission or the Office of the Scottish Charity Regulator to get over that hurdle and make themselves eligible. Would you agree with that, or would you say that should be done?
Absolutely. But also there's such a range of registration levels that you can go in at now, and community interest companies. But I'm a huge fan of organisations being a registered charity. It gives a certain kudos and an understanding, and does enable you, because there are many sort of grant makers out there, as well as individual donors, feel there's this sort of safety net around. Someone is policing and checking on you, and so rather than just an organisation that's doing good and a very much community-based organisation, and I think if you are very, very low-level community focused, people will know and understand you. Obviously, it's important you have some sort of constitution anyway, that you are a bona fide registered organisation, other than people just giving you money. But also there's all the benefits. If you're not a registered charity, you can't get gift aid, So what better than being able to increase the ability to increase every single individual donation by an extra 25%? You're missing out on this, and it's not too onerous. But obviously, if you are sort of just registering as a charity, one word of wisdom or advice I definitely give: don't just think about the here and now when you're coming up with your objects. So many people just think, oh, we're setting up this charity, this is what we want to do now. But future proof it. Think about, where will we want to be in 10 years' time? Because hopefully, the COVID crisis is something that's well and gone, and we don't even remember it hardly. There's some who will have wiped it from their memory. So don't just think we're setting up in response to the COVID crisis in our community. Just widen it so that you can future-proof, and you're not then having to reapply or apply to actually change your objects and your constitution. But no, definitely, it's easy. There's lots of information on the Charity Commission website. They're trying to help, not to hinder. And again, they've got a small charities unit that, again, will give help and guidance.
Yeah, we've got a point here about Gillian says that it's taking quite a long time at the moment to register with the Commission, because many organisations might be trying to register. I also think that the Commission is spending quite a lot of time focusing on the public trust and confidence issue, and maybe trying to sort of deregister some organisations. But things might change next year because it's going to be, there's going to be personnel changes at the Commission next year, so
Absolutely.
might change a little bit.
And I think the other thing, Tom, at the moment, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, is if you're an organisation out there who's applying to a funder that says we only accept registrations, applications from registered charities, I would still sort of apply if you can get in touch with them before, but actually say application pending. And put a footnote of, I think everyone is well aware, but again, applications, registrations are taking, extra time at the moment. So again, just put a little note into that. And again, that way, I'm sure, many sort of grant makers will look favourably on it. The fact you've got an application pending. So it's not that you've just not done it, it's just you've not got it yet. So I think definitely share that with them.
Yeah, it's good advice. And we also had a question about an increase in explaining an increase in staff costs to funders. So that is where an organisation might be recognising that it needs to focus on its fundraising activities more, employs a new fundraiser to help them with that, and that is might be. The perception is that might be seen negatively by some funders, that they're increasing staff costs at this time. Now, I would say that's showing, I would say that's a positive step. It's a strategic decision to focus on fundraising to increase income. I would say that was fairly straightforward to explain that as a positive move. How would you see that, Jill?
Well, they say there's so many things that are going on out there at the moment. You say it's about trying to keep us up to date and as current as possible, and just say, look at what you're doing and can it be amended? Sometimes people have a set spiel that they share with organisations, and sometimes they just need to focus it more. An organisation sometimes doesn't want to hear 90% of the other things. There's only 10% of what you're doing actually fulfills their criteria. Is it always the thing that they're really keen and excited about supporting at the moment? So again, it's about tapping into those things as well. Of not saying everything they do. So many organisations out there are really complex, and trying to sort of tell a funder or a donor everything that you're doing just actually sort of, totally boggles their mind. So just focus on things that fit with a funder's criteria, and be very, very specific. Also, if it is, you're doing something that's appealing to sort of your local community, not necessarily a grant maker, it's about trying to get the community or individuals fundraising. Just keep thinking, not from your perspective. This is one of my sort of key tips I'm constantly sharing. Get out of your shoes and put the shoes of the targeted audience on. So rather than think, what do I want? Think, what will they want from me in order to be able to do this? So definitely sort of, stop thinking about me all the time, your charity perspective, but think about your potential supporter, whether it's a grant making body, whether it's a corporate, whether it's an individual. Just think, what will they want from me? What will they want by having a relationship from us at the moment? And then really sort of, give them what we think it is, or give them a few options that possibly then can fit in with what it is that they're looking for. I'm coming across some charities at the moment who've not been that successful with corporate support. But while now, again, I was speaking to only a month ago, they said a corporate approached us and offered us £50,000. We've never been in this realm before. And so, again, get your message out there. People, organisations won't come to you unless they know, A, you exist, B, what you're doing, and there's a need for your services, and C, that you need money. So again, there is some sort of reactive responses out there. But, we need to get the general message out there. So get busy on social media, but also thank lots of supporters. I'm going to share a secret. I wasn't that big on social media until this year. I'm not saying I'm big on it, but I'd never tweeted before, 2020, but I definitely have now. But lots of people that they're wanting that profile for their audience. So if you're using Twitter, other aspects of social media, you're putting stuff on Instagram, with the company's name or the donor's name, if an individual wants to. Many individuals don't want that, but others, they're doing daft things. They're sort of constantly posting stuff on Facebook, on Instagram. Well, share that, because that's something perhaps that excites them, and they're getting back something that they're looking for, and that's sharing your message even wider. And as I say, that's something that lots of individuals and organisations, it's a great way to give recognition and to say a big thank you. And it's a public thank you. And you're thanking those people, in that public arena that's, sort of adding to that sort of halo effect that they're experiencing.
I think that it's an important point that you make. There was an obvious power relationship between the organisations doing the work and the organisations that have got the money. But charities and people on the ground helping beneficiaries should always remember that it's a partnership. And when they are doing that work, they are helping grant maker charities fulfill their charitable objects. It's a partnership, it's a relationship. Similarly with corporate donors, they've got strategic objectives, and you as an organization working directly with beneficiaries, the challenge is communicating why you're the best organization to help them achieve those objectives. As I say, there's an obvious power relationship between those who need the money and those who got the money. But it's just the shift thinking towards, well, this is a partnership. We're helping these organisations achieve their objectives. I just noticed that we've got one of our participants who's raised their hand. Sarah Evans. I'm just going to allow Sarah to talk if she wants to ask a question. I think it's gone now, so maybe Sarah's put her hand down.
Right. That's Sarah. You can stick it in the Q&A box. I've just been having a quick look. Some interesting ones in there. In terms of recommending a particular sort of platform for something, I'm a bit loath to do this sort of in a public arena, but also in a private one, because different products fulfill different needs for different organisations. So I know it sounds really crass, and sorry if it doesn't feel very helpful, but do some research. Talk to some other charities who are using the different platforms, and just ask them, what are some of the pros, what are some of the cons? Would you have, if you know what you know now, would you have gone with this provider? So again, just do a bit of research, see who's using some of the different platforms out there, and talk to other charities who are using them. Another question was, can I share some stuff about turning things into virtual events? I know you might want to be getting on with it now, but we're doing a session on the 2nd of February about going digital. So I really can't take up the time now because we've got a lot of questions that we're trying to get through. But as I say, we're doing a whole session on that, in just a couple of months. A couple of things about capital appeals. Yeah, what advice do you have for raising capital funds? It seems options have reduced. I totally agree. And as I say, I was actually myself working on a capital appeal when the COVID crisis hit, which has gone on hold. I know some capital appeals are continuing. And I think if you can demonstrate the impact that COVID's having, but also I think lots of organisations, funders in particular, one of the big questions that they're having is, will you be running the services in the way that you anticipated? And so I'm not suggesting you necessarily put your appeal on hold, but what I would do is think about that question and be able to answer it. Has COVID and the current sort of pandemic altered the way that you're actually delivering your services? And will that just be a short-term change, or is it going to be a long-term change? See, the thing I know another organisation I was having a conversation with about possibly doing some work with, they were actually wanting to increase their office capacity. Yes, they needed more room for their service delivery, but they were going to put a second floor on it and sort of put all their offices up there. But that organisation is saying, I just don't know when we'll have the same people in the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, in the way that we did before. So they're looking at their plans at the moment, and an individual desk space is being changed to sort of hot desking areas. I know at the moment that is difficult because of sort of cross transmission, but it's a longer term thing, you know, for work-life balance, for morale. They're finding people are enjoying the ability to work at home, but also recognize it doesn't suit everyone. So there is still going to be the option for people to come into the office. But for those people that it's working well, and they don't need to be in the office, they're not envisaging them ever coming back full time, or that role ever needing, you know, a 9 to 5, 5 days a week desk. But they're looking to increase their meeting room capacity, to say that, you know, it may be we have, you know, staff from certain areas come in twice a week, but we have a big meeting group, and then people can use that meeting room then for the rest of the day to do so use for hot desking. But you say, perhaps you say, looking at how you're sort of physically structured, and will you still want that space in the way? And if you do, that's fine. But yeah, I think what you need to be able to do is justify that and explain to funders. And some, you say, COVID specific programs are coming to an end. Definitely the National Lottery Community Fund is going back into some of its normal grant making rounds and things. So but just recognize your timeline might have just, you know, had an extra 12 months put into it. I think, you know, review, and don't waste some applications. At the moment, you might waste some applications, possibly to some of those bigger grant makers or to some individuals. Again, I know on the Thursday before the big sort of shutdown happened last time, I'd had an individual with a company. We weren't sure whether it was coming from him personally or his company, but we were talking between 100,000 and 250,000. And I think it was likely, as a result of the conversation, we were going to be at the top level. And we finished the meeting with him saying, "Give me a week, and I'll let you know, and I'll come back to you with a figure." But you know, the minute on the Tuesday morning after Boris's announcement on the Monday night, I just sort of I sent him a quick email saying, "Yeah, at this moment, you've other things on your mind. Forget the week that you committed to. Let's just pick up this later." And there's never been the right time to pick it up later, because he's really sort of struggling to keep his company going. It will come through. It's the sort of company that will. But again, they hit the rocks. But, you know, they'll come through. And what I didn't want to do, and I think for some of you who are looking at appeals like this at the moment, you know, you don't want to just get a £2,000 check, which is what I thought, oh, we could just easily fulfill his commitment, get us off, feel he gets us off his back. Well, I've done something, I've given, that's it. You know, and you could waste what could be 250,000 and you get 5k. It's just not worth it. So just look and think, look at your prospect list, and you might want to actually think, no, we'll go, keep them informed, tell them what you're doing. But at the moment, say, we're not actually asking for our capital appeal at the moment. We're keeping our plans alive, but we just want to let you know what we're doing in terms of the organisation at the moment. So again, I hope that helps, because there's been a few questions around that. Tom, have you spotted another?
Duncan's asking about, I'm just going to say, Duncan's asking about endowment campaigns. You know, is there a particular angle that can be used at this time? You know, because organisations might want more immediate outcomes. Endowments might be a bit of a different prospect for them. Is it the right time?
And I always say, with the amount of individual givers that are out there, and the number, you know, we've got around about 9,000 trusts here in the UK. There are some who that excites them. It's a specialist area, so you're never going to have the same level. But again, you know, what is that endowment going to do long term? And for some people, they see that almost as that legacy of theirs, not necessarily, you know, the death legacy, the gift in a will, but, you know, that is possibly their motivation. They want to see a long-term legacy. So possibly, you know, if you're looking to endow perhaps a professorship, you know, you're a university, or to actually fund your organisation long-term off the endowment. I think the popularity of endowments because of the stock market and investments, but again, what you would need to do is convince a potential supporter about the track record of investments where you're going to put your endowment. But then it will still appeal to some because they say, this is going to be, something I leave behind, even though they're not at death's time. But I'd also use it as a potential for a legacy campaign, a gifts in will. I know we've just had September was Remember a Charity time, but lots of November time is gifts in will time with the legal practice. And again, I think endowments will appeal to people thinking about leaving a gift in their will. Obviously, some of those can be an awful long time before they're fulfilled. But again, some might be shorter, especially if your typical donor, trustee, volunteer profile is more in that elderly, sort of age group as well. Right, we've got 10 minutes left, so we've got a couple of last slides to share. So let's see what else we can grab of these questions.
Okay. I was going to also make the point as well. I think you touched on it with particular age groups before, Jill. A CAF reported individual giving increased earlier this year by staggering amounts, actually. And some people dispute those figures, but nevertheless, they reported in the first 6 months of this year that individual giving increased. Now, there are some reasons why that may not continue into next year, but I think it's a reason to be optimistic that the public has been mobilised in the current situation, and charities and the work they do has really come to the fore, probably like never before. DSC has been doing a campaign, the Never More Needed campaign, with other organisations that highlight the excellent work that charities do. So I think that it's probably been recognised like never before, actually, which is quite encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just sort of quickly scrolling through. So some people have actually linked and actually helped answer some of the questions. That's brilliant. Thanks very much indeed for doing that. There's a question about, about advice engaging with corporates at the moment. Corporates is a huge area, so my answer is definitely yes, but then think about which corporates. Obviously, corporates who are struggling, no, they've got enough on their mind at the moment. But looking at organisations that perhaps have a need for a relationship, or possibly they've got their teams dispersed and morale might be an issue. So, it could well be that you could, do Quizzy Friday for them. And so it's a great way to engage with the corporate. But think about, I always say any donor is about a partnership, but definitely with a corporate, think about what tangibly can you give them in return for something. You've got to get the in return, otherwise you're not just a charity to help that corporate out at the moment, but think about it as possibly the way to get the foot into the door. Offer them something now that might be low level support, but hopefully that loyalty, that communication, that engagement will actually then, sort of buy you some time. And so as things start to come back, you'll be there and ready. So don't necessarily think about it great big time for corporates, but think about, yes, what can we do to engage? And again, I've got a charity I regularly support. I've just got a mailing through for them, their Christmas mailing. But, I was really thrilled to see they've never, ever had that sponsored. And that's what I think corporates are looking for at the moment. They're looking for profile. They're looking for their name to be out there. Their name to be associated with an organisation that's doing good at the moment. Perhaps got a good reputation, a high profile, whatever. But just think about what are they looking for at the moment. So I was thrilled about this charity. And the fact you say is gosh, I've been supporting them 20 years, and they've never had it. Their Christmas appeal pack has never been sponsored. So I just thought, there's corporates out there. They want that benefit of being associated with them, at Christmas, but also rather than just giving them £10,000, they're saying we can pay for this. So again, think about, can they even sponsor part of your services? Or can they actually help with some of your fundraising costs that gives them sort of, some profile in return? Right. What else have we got there, Tom? Have you spotted anything else that perhaps is something that several people have asked?
Someone's asking about the lottery. Jill, you mentioned about the lottery switching back to normal programs. And what time scale do we expect with that? I'm not sure whether they would have given a time scale, but there's a recognition that life goes on. In some ways, life is kind of returning back to normal, and there are non-COVID related issues that still need to be addressed. I think Trust and Foundations are certainly recognising that. Do you have any info on timescales with the lottery?
To be honest, Tom, I don't think they're quite sure at the moment. And they have the thing of they have some ongoing programs as well as time limited programs. I'd definitely stick their webpage up on your favourites and, make a point, perhaps Monday morning, a coffee break, just check what's going on. Because again, they're very good at sharing information. So I'd just be sort of, clicking onto that on a really regular basis. I've just spotted one, Tom. I really just want to sort of grab quick. Somebody said, can a charity that's financially secure make a donation to a similar charity which has made an appeal for funds in their hour of need? Really interesting one, Neil. Yeah, so someone who says a charity is, fine and similar causes. It will depend. Again, some charities have in their constitution they can't give money to another charity. It's somewhere in a grey cell. So forgive me if I'm wrong, and if there's anyone out there from the Mothers Union. But the Mothers Union is part of the Church of England and is a charity in its own right. And I think they can't physically give money to another charity. So just think about it. Maybe you do some partnership working with them. Again, that is something, there's lots of things happening. I know 2 dementia charities have just announced merging. Again, it's a way that some charities are surviving is by merging, but also, is this the time to actually merge with another charity? I know there may be some sort of losses, but again, there may be lots of gains come out of a merger. So I know, again, possibly people on the call aren't the ones who will be instigating that. But think about running services in partnership. Funders, donors love that. I know it might have complications for you as organisations, and make sure you do get a good agreement between each other. But again, some funders, I've even been redirected, but say, go and talk to them. I'm sure they're doing something very similar. And they see it as a way to reduce risk. But also it extends your reach as an organisation, because both organisations perhaps have a similar audience for services that they're delivering, but also they've got their unique ones. So it might enable you to deliver services to a wider audience who are experiencing similar issues. But by working in partnership, you can actually get a further reach. So maybe you do some partnership working, but there's no reason why charities can't give money to others so long as it's in their constitution. So that might be something to look into. So I just wanted to pull on that one. Okay, well, I'm sorry if we've not got through everybody's questions and answers, but hopefully we've got through lots of them and given you some overall tips and things. But I'm conscious we've just a couple of minutes left. And there's just a couple of final slides I want to share because of the information that's on there. And obviously these are going to be available on the ecclesiastical website as well afterwards. So let me just put these up and we can get back to those and I can just sort of finish off the session with these. So obviously we've just done the question and answer. So thank you very much indeed for sending us through your questions. Hopefully we've got through most of them. And secondly, then you say next steps, what to do after this. So on the right-hand side, there's lots and lots of resources there that the DSC has that you might want to link into, but also up there, sorry, that's the right-hand side, yeah. And on the left-hand side, there is the ecclesiastical.com/charity fundraising. There's their website there to actually look for further support and resources from there. So if you've not had your question answered, please do go there. There may be information already there or a way to actually tap into getting the answer. So do sign up for those future webinars that I mentioned earlier. Those are the dates and the titles of what we're covering. And there's that Going Digital, as I said, at the start of February. So thank you very much. And hopefully we've got somebody dying for that one to happen. So I say, just finally, you're going to get some information subsequent to this. So please do feedback, and hope to see you at another session in the coming months. So we just got a final clip here from Chris Pitt. I just want to share this as we are about to wrap up now.
Thank you very much for listening today. I'm Chris Pitt, Head of Responsible Business at Ecclesiastical Insurance. We hope that's been helpful at a really challenging time. At Ecclesiastical, we're all about finding more ways to support charities like you. This webinar is one way, and the recording will be on our website. We're always growing the resources on our fundraising hub too. So visit ecclesiastical.com/charity fundraising. And if there's anything that you need that isn't on there, let us know. And of course, we're committed to giving too. Our ambition is to give over £100 million to good causes. This year, we've given hundreds of £1,000 donations and large grants to innovative projects too. We're calling it our Moving for Good. And if you'd like to be part of it, visit ecclesiastical.com/Moving for Good. Thank you.
So thank you all very much out there in cyberspace and in the virtual world. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to be working with you this morning. Hopefully you've been signposted to various places to go for extra information, but also to access the information that we've shared this morning. It's been lovely looking through the list of people who've been in the chat and also the Q&A. And I was so busy looking at that, I forgot that Tom was talking to me at one point, but it's been lovely. There's loads of names there that I recognise, so really lovely to reconnect with some of you out there, but also to meet lots of new people. Tom, do you want to just say a final goodbye to everyone as well?
I'd just like to say good luck, everyone, and carry on doing the amazing work that you're doing. We will get through it. We'll survive.
Yes, and let's turn survival into success. So good luck, everyone. There's plenty of money out there. Let's just make sure we're getting some for those incredible causes that you're all working for, supporting, helping make a real difference to the lives of individuals, both locally, but also internationally as well. There is money out there for international work, and I'm working with a client this afternoon on that as well. So I know there was somebody who said that, but keep thinking about what's happening internationally that people can support, who are traditional supporters, but also some new supporters as well. So thank you all very much indeed, and hope to see you in another month's time. Thanks, Tom, for your help.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye.